A spacecraft is closing in on Mars at 12,000 miles an hour. In a few minutes, the Perseverance rover will be on the ground. It's on a mission like nothing ever done before. Searching for traces of life in an ancient river delta. And collecting samples for return to Earth. To get this far, its creators have endured gut-wrenching setbacks and a global pandemic. Thousands of people played a role to make this happen. But only a few have ever touched this marvel of human ingenuity. It takes great minds to build something like this. It also takes great hands.
A spacecraft, a NASA spacecraft, highfalutin, big ideas, but in the end, it is handmade. It's put together by technicians. And so you have this great contrast between heady, theoretical ideas and engineering science and craftsmanship, workmanship. And by the way, that's a big deal, because all the heady ideas don't go anywhere without it coming together the right way. We're going to stick the spacecraft on a rocket, light it up, and hurl it off towards Mars. There will be no intervention once we're done with this. We're going to have what we have, and if something's not right, or if there's a little tiny machine screw rattling around in there, the whole mission can be lost.
As you design and build a spacecraft, there are always hurdles that come up. It's never perfect, it's never exactly as you plan. The engineers obviously are critical and pivotal to designing and testing, but the flight techs, they are the people making sure that what they put together is going to work on Mars. It's crucial to have everyone hand in hand working together.
You don't have to have a college degree to do this, but all us techs do have a role. It's not like you can go on Amazon and order one of these spacecraft.
Flight technicians are the only group that's allowed to handle flight hardware. We're unlike any other place on the planet. We're not industry. We're not pushing the techs to get things done quickly. It's all about perfection.
We're mechanics putting together a spacecraft. It might be a little bit more sophisticated than being a grease mechanic, on an engine. But basically, we're space mechanics.
We're good with our hands. We're good with tools, This is what I do. And if that leads to building a spacecraft, then that's what I built.
My understanding of theoretical and design elements is limited, but I'm the caretaker of many years of scientific effort. Countless man hours of the mechanical engineers, the design engineers. So behind that one piece could be hundreds of people. And we are entrusted with that system.
Perseverance has the same basic design as the Curiosity rover that's been on Mars since 2012. But the payload is all new. The centerpiece is a complex robotic system to drill and cache samples of Martian rock for return to Earth by a future mission.
The idea of sending spacecraft to Mars, grabbing some samples, and bringing them back, this is something that scientists and engineers have wanted to do for a very long time, many decades, because they might hold signs of ancient life.
A device called MOXIE will attempt to extract oxygen from the thin carbon dioxide atmosphere of Mars, paving the way for future human missions if it works. There will also be an experimental helicopter, the first attempt to fly a rotor-driven aircraft on another planet. This team could be the Wright brothers of Mars.
Flying a helicopter on Mars is a game changer, introducing the entire aerial dimension to exploring a planet. I mean, how often do you get a chance in a lifetime, right, to go for a first of a kind?
Dozens of iconic spacecraft have come together at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory over the past 60 years. Every one of them born from the marriage of visionary engineering and elite hands-on skills. At this level, some of those hands-on skills are as unique as the hardware they're building.
You can go to school to train to fix jet engines, because there's lots of jets and they need jet engine technicians. But there's no school for spacecraft technicians that I know of.
The closest thing to a school for flight technicians is JPL's legendary Building 18.
This is the hub for the flight technicians. One of the oldest buildings on lab. It's been here about 60 years, and from here we're dispersed all across the whole lab.
Jim Pearson started as a flight tech more than 25 years ago. Now he's the boss and head talent scout, recruiting people with the right stuff to work on spacecraft.
I'm looking for an attitude. Somebody who's willing to dig deep. Somebody who can understand the importance of the work that we're doing.
If you can come in with the right mindset, then you can be trained how to work on spacecraft. I remember very clearly the first hole I drilled. Here I am with a drill in a clean room with 4 people watching me, and I'm dealing with hardware that's worth millions of dollars. So if I mess up, that could be catastrophic. And I was reminded of that before I did it, and I was sweating. I was sweating bullets.
Prior to JPL, I was working at a bike shop. You know, I'm used to having grease and dirt under my cuticles, so coming into a clean room to a big eye-opener. It was a culture shock. You don't want to be too fast-moving. You don't want to bump into anything. You don't want to drop something. You don't want to disturb this zen.
I had nightmares about this. I do not want to be the one person that's going to ruin this for everybody.
The technicians are a bit like a surgeon in that a slip of the hand, a mistake, and you really can lose the patient. So they have tremendous responsibility.
Make sure there's room.
The stakes are high, and everyone knows it. Even the veterans feel the pressure.
You have to be able to really kind of block it out and not get nervous, even though they could say, oh, that's a $2 million camera, you know? And so you just don't tell me.
I put in 6 screws in one day and come home exhausted because my level of focus on those 6 screws was so intense. They have to be so perfect, everything has to be so right and exact that you come home and go, why am I so tired? All I did was 6 screws. It comes back to the complexity of what we're building. You can't do this and not have problems. It's not that simple.
Look, I'm an engineer. Up here, on this floor, in our offices where we engineer the spacecraft, it's intellectually collaborative. Wow, that's an interesting idea you have. I like that, right? Let's think about that, blah, blah, blah. Down there, it's actual touch labor collaboration. It's arduous, it's amazingly complicated. When you design a spacecraft, one of its greatest challenges is actually being made. And that's the techs.
In March 2019, 16 months before launch, the spacecraft is in its final phase of construction in JPL's Spacecraft Assembly Facility. The rover is still a box full of wires, 3.5 miles of it, with 22,000 wired contacts. It won't get its name, Perseverance, for another year. For now, it's just the 2020 rover, still waiting for its wheels, robotic arm, cameras, and all the rest of its toolkit. Meanwhile, it's filling up with the electronics that will run all the hardware still being built.
We have this phase of the mission called ATLO, which means Assembly, Test, and Launch Operations. But along with being a phase of the mission, it's this army of people, it's like a SEAL teams almost, very carefully chosen, very select group of people that physically build our spacecraft.
ATLO is where everything comes together, the integration of all the major components. The ATLO team will eventually be on the launch pad. They'll be conducting launch pad operations.
The ATLO team is responsible not only for assembling the spacecraft, but for making sure that it works as a system when all the parts are put together. The rover doesn't fly to Mars by itself. The cruise stage manages the journey from Earth to Mars, then separates just before arrival. Then comes the 7 minutes of terror, as the spacecraft decelerates from 12,000 miles an hour to a gentle touchdown. Radio commands at the speed of light will take 11 minutes from Earth to Mars, so the spacecraft is on its own. The aeroshell carries it through the fiery collision with the Martian atmosphere. Then deploys the parachute from its mortar. The heat shield drops off. And the rocket-powered descent stage takes it the rest of the way in. Finally, there's the acrobatic sky crane maneuver. And then the rover is on Mars.
Let's start pushing northeast.
Over the next few weeks, they'll be temporarily stacking all those parts together for a brutal series of tests simulating the trip to Mars. The rover's not ready yet, so they have a mass-modeled dummy inside to get the correct weight and center of gravity.
It's major work. It's heavy lifts, critical lifts, millions of dollars in hardware. So the smallest little mistake can be huge.
On the crane. Let's come east, slow, east, slow.
Engineers direct the lifts, but only technicians, and only the most experienced, can operate the crane.
It's a potentially dangerous situation. And so doing it safely, making sure you have everything hooked up right, making sure you haven't missed something is key. And that's a place where experience comes into play.
You're now swinging a few tons in the air, and there are hazards there. By the sheer size of the spacecraft, you can't see all around it. You have to trust that that person on the other side is doing their job.
Down on slow.
There are certain key moments that it just takes your breath away. Seeing the spacecraft stacked for the first time, you're reminded that this is real, this is happening, this massive collaboration, and I have all of that work in my hands. At that point, you saw the complete spacecraft that's going to fly to Mars.
The stacked spacecraft is now ready for its first major system test. Over the next 12 days, inside a space simulation chamber, it will have to prove it can function in the frigid vacuum of deep space on its 7-month journey to Mars.
Has life ever existed beyond Earth? Does it today? Has it ever? Has life ever emerged on another planet? You know, as astrobiologists, we believe it must have, but
But right now, we have no evidence. So we're going to Mars, we're collecting first samples from another planet with the intention of one day bringing them back to our most powerful laboratories on Earth, and we can analyze them for signs of ancient life with instruments that are way too big to ever fly to Mars. We're headed to a place called Jezero Crater. The big signpost is the Delta. Up in the northwest corner, we see this beautiful fan-shaped feature, and a delta really only forms on Earth where you get a river flowing into a standing body of water. That tells us very clearly that 3-some billion years ago, there was a lake in Jezero Crater, a great place for life to survive and thrive if it ever emerged on Mars. We know exactly where we're going now, and it's an incredibly exciting time.
A lot of 2020 scientists, like Ken Williford, trained as field geologists, exploring landscapes and unraveling stories rocks can tell about the past. With a rover on Mars, though, they'll have to work from home. They've been practicing remote geology. One team out in the desert playing the rover on Mars,
We got all these cables here.
pointing cameras at rock formations and streaming the images back to JPL. Another team at JPL practicing how they'll interpret images from Mars and make decisions about what to do next. Then they visit the site to see what it looks like in person.
Everyone was looking at the images on their computer, looking at the data, very remotely, just like we do on Mars. But it's really a different kind of experience when you can come out here as a person and look at the rocks yourself with your own eyes and point the instrument at the outcrop and get that data back real time. And I think it just gives people a new perspective on the observations that come down from a rover. It reminds you that when you are looking at the images that are on Mars, there's a whole field site there.
They have to travel a bit farther to see what the jackpot on Mars might look like.
The key reason we came to this locality in the middle of the outback is rocks like this. Rocks like this are extremely rare. What's very special about them is they have evidence of the earliest life on Earth. And they tell us what we should be looking for on Mars.
When we say with Mars 2020, we're seeking the signs of ancient life on Mars, this is precisely the kinds of signs of life that we'll be seeking. These wrinkly layered structures that we call stromatolites, which represent basically fossilized pond scum in a sense. This is what we would call a biosignature, sign of life, observable to the naked eye and therefore observable to, say, the mast-mounted cameras on a rover.
If we see something like this on Mars, it is a very, very good day. It would be a very important scientific discovery. We would characterize it using the instruments that are on the rover, and then we would sample it and prepare it for return to Earth.
Now it's up to the engineers to make it happen, starting with Jezero Crater, the most dangerous place they've ever attempted to land on Mars.
Landing on Mars is always very difficult. I mean, the vehicle has to do everything on its own, right? We have no ability to joystick the spacecraft as it's coming in. But at Jezero Crater, I see a lot of dangers that we have to deal with. There are rock fields to the east. We need to avoid steep slopes as well. There's a 60 to 80 meter cliff that we definitely don't want to land on. That would definitely be a bad day.
To improve the odds, they're developing a new camera system to help the lander detect and avoid hazards on its own.
We're deep into the second week of testing. This critical piece of new technology for helping us land safely at Jezero. This gives the vehicle the ability to figure out where it is, using a camera to take pictures on the way down and compare the pictures to pictures we've taken from orbiters, kind of a map of the place we're trying to go. And then we can use our engines to steer the vehicle to safe spots that we can reach because we know where we are finally. Everything still has to go right for us to make it. It's my job to be nervous about everything, but what we've been doing this week has given me a lot of confidence.
Landing on Mars is never a sure thing, but it has been accomplished before by some of these same JPL engineers. And apart from the new hazard avoidance system, the descent stage is pretty much the same as it was for Curiosity, built by many of these same techs. The biggest risks on any mission are the things that have never been done before.
We want to bring samples from Mars back to Earth. It takes 3 missions to make that happen. 1 mission to core into the rocks of Mars, take core samples, seal them in inhumanly clean vessels, and leave those vessels on the surface of Mars. The 2nd mission, to take those sealed samples, put them in a small rocket, and put them in orbit around Mars. The 3rd mission, to scoop them out of orbit and bring them back to Earth. And our mission, Mars 2020, is the first of those missions. I think that almost everybody on this project shares my personal anxiety that it's that sampling system that is our greatest challenge on this mission. I'm the chief engineer for the project, and I try to be able to span the range of all the different elements of the spacecraft and then find the holes in our defense against mistakes and our defense against risk. Prior to having this job, I developed the sampling system. This incredibly challenging set of mechanisms that we use to core rocky samples and keep them clean and move them through and process them and collect them. We have a sample tube that sits inside this drill. The drill bit's put into a corer, and the corer goes, and as it does that, it shoves that column of rock into the sample tube. We then bring the sample tube out. We're doing this with the sample handling arm on the inside of the spacecraft. And we move that tube to a station that assesses the volume, to a station that takes images. We put a seal on it, and then we put that tube back in storage. We got 43 of these tubes inside the spacecraft. We can do that 43 times. A rocky core. This is what it's all about. We want to bring a sample like this. We want to bring 30 samples like this back from Mars. And so we're putting our system together, this behemothly complicated thing. It outstrips the complexity of anything that's been created by humans and put into space, ever.
This equipment is not going to Mars. This is our engineering model, so it's built to be as flight-like as possible with the same functionality as everything in Mars. So we're in a very dirty environment here, and we're going to drill rocks with it. We're going to cover it in dust and really run it through its paces and wear it out.
That's a pretty good looking core.
This dirty testing version of the hardware will take a beating over the next few years, eventually moving to a space simulation chamber to prove it can function in the frigid, low-pressure environment of Mars. Two flight versions, one of which will actually go to Mars, are still being built at this point under very different conditions.
One of our key concerns with Mars 2020 is keeping it clean. So we're going to Mars, we're spending a lot of resources to collect these samples. We don't want to be analyzing bits of Earth.
On a good day, the air outside JPL, just north of Los Angeles, is a soup of hydrocarbons and millions of microscopic particles in every cubic foot of air. On a bad day, it can be in the hundreds of millions. The spacecraft clean room is filtered to no more than 10,000 microscopic particles per cubic foot. The ultra-clean rooms, where the flight sampling hardware is built, have no more than 100 per cubic foot.
About 2.5 years ago, they came to me and said, we need to set up some clean rooms that could handle this cleanliness level. It's something that we've never done here at JPL before, and we don't know how to do it. Everything inside the clean room had to be brand new, which means brand new flow benches, brand new toolboxes with brand new tools. All the computer systems are brand new, everything, right out of the box. and born into the clean room. It took a year for me to get them up and running. No joke, it took a year. It was crazy.
The technicians have been part of the team from the get-go, sort of authored this approach and verified that we could actually pull it off.
The rules for the ultra-clean rooms go way beyond what's required in any other clean rooms at JPL. They start with the same gloves, masks, and bunny suits. There's the same air shower on the way in. But in these ultra-clean rooms, that's just the beginning.
I work with the bits and core team, and this needs to capture what's coming from Mars, not what's coming from Earth. So we have to take extraordinary measures.
I've got technicians over in the ultra clean rooms that are wearing double bunny suits, double gloves.
Anything that can produce a particle that can cause contamination is not allowed. No scented shampoo or conditioner, no perfume, no cologne, no makeup, things like that.
The rule is if we smell you before you go in, you can't come in. You can't smoke. Oh, a few people needed to quit that.
Yeah, it kind of became like JPL urban mythology. Double bunny suiting and all stainless steel tools. You'd hear these incredible things they were doing kind of on the bleeding edge of technology.
We rarely see them. They're almost the ghost of lab. I honestly don't even know what to expect.
We are working on something that is the cleanest we've ever really attempted to send into space. So we've had to rethink, how do we do this as cleanly as possible and keep all those particles off the rest of the surface of the flight hardware?
Cleanest of all are the titanium sample tubes that will preserve Martian rock cores from the moment they're drilled until they return to Earth. By the time they go to Mars, they'll be the cleanest things ever made.
That is not hyperbole. Literally cleaner than anything humans have ever made.
Even gloved hands can't touch the tubes during cleaning. In hands-free cages, they'll go through a barrage of chemical solvents. They've been through a complex manufacturing process: machining, polishing, special coatings, often sterilized between steps. And now, before they go to the techs for mechanical assembly, they're cleaned again. Multiple soaks and solvent tanks agitated with high-frequency sound strip away more particles and organics.
No particles thicker than a strand of hair. A fingerprint can weigh around 50 micrograms. We are trying to hit less than 0.1 micrograms for organic contaminations.
Then they get baked in a high-temperature oven to burn off whatever is left. They're building 200 of these tubes. In the end, 43 of the most pristine will go to Mars. In the meantime, the technicians have to add mechanical parts without contaminating them. That happens in an even cleaner room, with sterile gloves, sterile smocks, and sterile goggles on top of everything else. They call it Area 151.
Ready? Go. You can go in now.
To put all of these very, very clean elements together is a tremendous amount of handwork. And you have to do it in these very, very clean environments using aseptic assembly protocols.
You're not touching a lot of surfaces. You want your hands to be sterile. You want your tools to be sterile. It's required all of our flight technicians to retrain their minds about how they build the flight hardware.
You have to be very, very conscious of your hands. You can't rest your hands on the table. You can't rest them on your gown.
It's all about the handwork. There's a tremendous demand on the physical control of the people with touch, labor on the hardware to make this cleanliness all come to pass. They can get it right or they can get it wrong.
Everything about this has been more difficult and taken longer than expected.
One thing that we didn't appreciate was that there were enough piece parts, enough special things, special surface treatments, special processes, that we have slipped our schedule. We really wanted to be in the position that we're in now about 6 months ago. So the sampling system is what wakes me up in the middle of the night most frequently.
Up the hill, as they say at JPL, is a legendary spacecraft torture chamber called the 25-foot space simulator. This relic from the early 1960s, declared a National Historic Landmark, is still the state-of-the-art for recreating the punishing environments of space on Earth.
After the whole spacecraft's been assembled, we'll roll it through the high bay here and load it into the chamber. The primary function of this is to simulate space as the spacecraft is actually flying. It simulates the extreme cold of space and the extreme hot, from the sun to the shade, as well as the high vacuum, the lack of pressure. We're going to light off D5. The walls and the floor of the chamber are flooded with liquid nitrogen, which cools it to about negative 180 C.
That's 292 below zero Fahrenheit.
We can then use the solar simulator to heat up the top of the spacecraft. The light that you see here is actually coming from a xenon arc lamp that's 2 floors down, shining up through a lens assembly on the 2nd floor. Right now we have 1 arc lamp running. We'll run about 18 lamps during the actual hot case for the spacecraft.
The hot case can reach 212 degrees above zero on the sunny side of the spacecraft. Exploring this building is a bit like going back in time to the beginning of the space age. The Mariner 2 Venus probe, NASA's first spacecraft to visit another planet, was tested here in 1962, followed by just about every interplanetary traveler since then.
So this is the end bell of the chamber. This is the bottom of the pressure vessel. This is where the vacuum's held. Most of the electronics for the spacecraft are passed through these ports. This is a 32 kilowatt arc lamp. Right now it's running about 20 kilowatts. This is just one. We would usually use 18 of them for our warm case for the spacecraft.
The 2020 spacecraft, minus the rover, is now in the chamber for its first major system test. Over the next 12 days, it will experience most of the extreme deep space conditions it has to survive on the way to Mars. The simulator can also replicate the thin, dry atmosphere and wide temperature swings on the surface of Mars. This is where the Ingenuity helicopter proved it could both fly and control itself in that environment. It had to be very light, just under 4 pounds, but powerful enough to spin the rotors at 2,400 RPM to generate lift in an atmosphere less than 1% as dense as Earth.
It was an amazing feeling. We've been working for 4.5, almost 5 years. It's a huge milestone for us.
It will travel to Mars attached to the bottom of the rover and drop free when it's time to fly. It will only fly a few times. The goal is to prove itself as a technology for future missions.
We'll be able to get high-definition images of places that we want to send rovers to. So we'll have a scout to inform before long traverses, and then we'll be able to have a totally new way to get to places we simply cannot get to today. And to be able to sit here and say, yes, it's working, is a huge deal. It's a huge deal. But there's always going to be a but until we do it at Mars.
Of course, not everything can be tested in the simulator. To test the parachute under Mars conditions, they had to launch a supersonic rocket and deploy the chute 100,000 feet up, where the atmosphere on Earth is as thin as Mars near the surface. But even that doesn't tell them everything they need to know.
In order to get that parachute out behind the vehicle, we have to shoot it out of a cannon called a mortar at about 100 miles an hour. So we're out here getting ready to do a test of that cannon. We've got lots and lots of high-speed imagery, recording it up to 20,000 frames per second, because we're witnessing and monitoring and watching things that are occurring in microseconds, or at least milliseconds. We've got a parachute pack that's loaded into this canister behind me. This is the 14th test. There are a number of small changes that we've made along the way. This is hopefully the final test to see that all those changes worked. It's a pretty exciting test. That's about 200 feet high that this thing has to travel in a fraction of a second. And when this goes off, it's a pretty spectacular boom. It's 108 grams of black powder. We study, we analyze, we predict, we model all of these behaviors, but it's not until we actually do a test like this that we get to see if it works the way that we need it to.
That's true of pretty much every element of the spacecraft. A near twin of the flight rover, designed for hard testing, is spun up to 18 Gs on a centrifuge to simulate the crushing gravitational stress of launch and landing. That's about 6 times more than astronauts experience on launch from Earth. The wheels and suspension have to survive the shock of landing. And then, endless hours of driving in the Mars yard, using a stripped-down rover to approximate its weight in Mars gravity. The Perseverance wheels are more rugged than the ones on the Curiosity rover, which took an unexpected beating in the early days after landing. When the problem first appeared, they built a test track in the Mars yard to get an idea of how much longer Curiosity's wheels might last. Helping to build that track was James Bailey's introduction to the elite world of spacecraft development.
I went up to what is known as the Mars yard, and I was handed a 20-pound sledgehammer and a bucket of rocks and said, "You're gonna break some rocks."
My first couple months here at JPL, learning about spacecraft and the Mars mission, this was my first dose of it. And coming from the Army, it was the easiest money I ever got. So this is my beginning of JPL.
The Mars Yard rock pile can test the attitude of new flight techs. Those who pass move on to work where the stakes and the expectations are much higher. The team building the rover's mobility system, wheels and suspension, has been at it for 3.5 years. In a little over a month, they'll deliver it to the flight rover. Today, they're drilling holes through the titanium suspension by hand.
They got about 30 plus high precision holes that they're drilling. It's titanium, so it's very difficult to drill on its own. But then, irrespective of the material, it's still difficult to hit the kind of size tolerances that we're after. We're talking 10,000ths of an inch. But we don't get to mount our suspension to a drill press or to a mill to make these holes.
Everything has a feel to it, whether it's the drill speed, the temperature of the material. You're communicating with the hardware. All the techs have that sense.
I think some of the engineers at the beginning of this would have said, you can't achieve this kind of precision by hand. Starting from a really small hole, making it a little bigger each time. But now we can hit hole after hole to that level of precision.
A few days later, they're installing the electric drive and steering motors into the suspension struts, where they'll be mounting the wheels. It's some of the most critical hardware on the rover, and some of the trickiest to handle. These actuators have to be rugged enough to work for years on Mars at temperatures that can swing 100 degrees in a single day. but they're vulnerable in human hands. The rover has 10 of them. It took years to build and perfect 12, giving them 2 spares. That makes them worth about $1 million apiece.
It's definitely a moment where you need to be extremely focused. There's no room for error. You kind of have to drown everything else out and at the same time not be afraid.
You know, we're at a phase now where the stakes are really high, and it's not so much about like monetary value of something, it's really about irrecoverable schedule at this point. We're looking at years and years of another team's work, and now it's our responsibility to see it safely onto its next destination.
The electrical cabling harness, another system representing years of work by another team. Powered up for the first time, everything works.
That was pretty good.
Now it's ready for wheels. They've been in production for more than a year. They have 43 altogether. Only 6 will go to Mars. The rest will stay behind as spares for the test rovers in the Mars yard. Now, just days away from delivery to the flight rover, they're in the hands of the mobility team for the first time.
This stuff looks beautiful because it's a product of functional design kind of being taken to the nth degree. I find that complex designs are usually complex because they haven't had enough time to cook and distill down to something elegant. You know, it feels really high pressure now because it's not a few different piece parts in different people's hands. You know, it's one big installation. So we feel a great sense of responsibility, I think, to really not mess it up in these final stages.
A few days later, the rover mobility system is leaving its birthplace in Building 18. It's a venerable tradition at JPL. The procession of finished flight hardware down the hill to the spacecraft assembly facility. This is where the people who built it say goodbye to hardware they've been working on for the past 3 or 4 years and hand it over to ATLO, the assembly, test, and launch operations team.
It's not in the handbooks of engineering at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. You run into it when you build your first piece of spaceflight hardware and you go to deliver it to the rest of the spacecraft, and you watch this group grab it and carry it away from you. You're like, whoa, 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 wait a second. You know, I understand this piece of hardware, and how do you know, why do you think you understand it? As soon as you hand it over to them, they're like, whatever, dude.
Now ATLO owns it, so it's no longer their responsibility. Now we control it, and we will be the ones to put it on the spacecraft.
All right. We'll take care of this. We'll get it inside with QA, and we'll stanchion it off.
Appreciate it, sir.
Secure for you.
It's like taking a kid to college, I imagine.
You deliver to ATLO, and then it kind of becomes possessed by this group of people. They take tremendous ownership of the elements of the spacecraft that come into them. And I think that that's the perfect perspective for them to have, because once they have those pieces of spaceflight hardware, it's all in their hands, literally in their hands. If you make mistakes at that point, they can be very, very, very costly. They can conceivably cost the mission.
The stacked spacecraft has served its time in the space simulator with no major problems. From here, it goes back to the clean room to be taken apart again and given its final tune-up. From now on, it's going to be all about the rover. First up, the remote sensing mast. Essentially the rover's head, with high-resolution color cameras, navigation cameras, and the SuperCam laser. Installations are meticulously planned, closely supervised, and inherently risky.
Up, slow. Stop. Okay. South, slow.
Engineers direct,
South. Slow.
and the techs handle the crane and flight hardware.
Small bump east.
Most other places I've worked at, it's just like, shut up and turn the wrench. But here, it's very different. Everyone is valued for the insight that they bring to things.
Slow.
It's more than just having the skills. There's a mindset to those guys. The work is very demanding. There's a lot of pressure. The hours, you know, we're working 2 shifts. There'll be times when we'll be working 3 shifts. You're working over weekends.
Like any work site, when you're in the middle of it, you're just like, oh, why do I do this? But everyone comes back. we're like the mafia. Everyone comes back.
I must be nervous. My sweaty hands won't go into these gloves.
A week later, it's time for the wheels.
But yeah, by the end of today, both sides should be on.
No pressure. Okay, let's shower time. Shower time.
This will be an all-day operation with 2 precision lifts on the crane.
Main west, slow. West, slow. Stop.
It's a delicate balancing act, lining it up precisely to mate to the body of the rover, matching 2 pins to corresponding holes on the chassis.
We're good here.
The tolerance of the pinholes is 1/1000th of an inch.
Stop.
The lead mobility tech makes the final connections.
89, 340, correct.
Everybody puts so much work and effort into it. A little bit of their soul is in the rover. The hand touching the work is what creates it. It's a great experience.
Pretty cool. It's starting to look like a rover now.
You want to hug it and kiss it and whatever.
The robotic arm is next. A 7-foot-long, 5-jointed limb that will carry the drill turret and 2 science instruments to analyze rocks. It connects to the rover through a single mounting plate. And because this mission is looking for signs of ancient life, the mating surfaces, which won't come apart again, have to be as clean as possible.
It's my job to make sure that as we build this rover, that we do it in a clean way so that we don't contaminate Mars with our Earth bacteria. Because we're bringing samples back, we also have to make sure that we don't find any dead bodies of Earth bacteria that may be mistaken for ancient fossilized microbial life.
They sample for certain microbes that could potentially survive both the cleaning and the lethal environment of space.
The spacecraft isn't sterile, but we have a maximum limit based on this whole journey. It can still be a certain level of dirty and still be clean enough so that it doesn't contaminate Mars because it goes through these harsh environments.
Yep, just close on this side. Yeah. That was a good one.
The turret, the business end of the robotic arm, holds the rock coring drill and 2 science instruments.
As the spacecraft goes from an idea to reality, there are less and less opportunities to catch mistakes. And people have got to be willing to call out when something's not right, because you can't sort of fake it.
You have to make sure it's done 100% right. The rhythm, the movement, that also has to be perfect. You're holding out the torque wrench, you're turning it, click, perfect. Now that's been torqued. Now you have to get the tool out, make sure it's coming out straight, don't hit anything.
Trying to cover up or hide a mistake is totally taboo. Let's say you drop a fastener. Clink, 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 clink. If you don't tell anybody, there is a possibility that that fastener could stop something from working properly. It's just understood. You make a mistake, you come talk to us.
So hand labor at the point of the spear where a mistake can mean $2 billion is very unusual and very intense and demands tremendous integrity of the people doing it.
Now, the fiendishly complex, unearthly clean sample handling system. They're building 2 potential flight versions, one of which will go to Mars. Neither is ready yet, but one of them has to go into the rover now to make sure it fits and connects properly. So this one will be coming back out eventually. The bit carousel is another intricate part of the sampling system that delivers bits to the drill, and another challenge to keep clean.
It is all about being a contortionist with this thing, and you have to be a sterile contortionist on top of it. It is a very tight area. It's definitely like nothing else we've dealt with.
Finally, the Ingenuity helicopter. It will ride to Mars mounted on the belly pan underneath the rover and drop free when it's time to fly.
This is something that not very many people get to do. Build these spacecraft with their bare hands. So being a part of this is pretty amazing.
One of the most incredible things about being at JPL as a scientist is putting together this scientific way of thinking that is really trying to understand how natural systems work. Next to these engineers who are thinking about how can we build something that allows scientists to answer these questions. And then you have these incredibly talented technicians who are out there really on the front lines putting things together. And it really is astounding. I mean, just the artistry. The level of detail and complexity is mind-blowing. We have these wiring systems that are all bundled together, and then that whole bundle is tied together with string. And that has always just struck me as just such a beautiful thing that we do, this incredibly high-tech enterprise and operation, and you see little bits of string, you know, holding it together just so. It's really wonderful.
Perseverance is now ready for its most demanding test, the space simulator, where the gloves come off and it will have to prove itself under Mars conditions.
That is a biggie. If we get through that, you can really have a good determination of are we going to go or not go.
Before it goes to the space simulator, the rover has to pass another test, mated to the descent stage. Mounted together the way they'll fly to Mars, they're going to experience some of the stress of launch. This is the vibration table, and its job is to simulate the experience of sitting upside down on an Atlas V rocket during liftoff. Just one of the many indignities they will have to endure on the way to Mars. A few days later, the rover moves on alone to the 25-foot space simulator. For the first time, it carries its weight on its own wheels. Now comes 2 weeks of virtual Mars, a critical test of survival for the journey ahead, and at least 2 Earth years on the surface.
That is a major milestone because that's where we actually get to run the rover through all its functions as if it was sitting on Mars. You know, so everyone's excited to get it in the chamber, start that testing. We get through that, now we're on the downhill side towards launch.
We have the Mars rover in the chamber right now doing her system thermal test. Over in this room over here, we have the ATLO team, the ATLO systems team, who's controlling the spacecraft right now as she's powered on. We're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 14 days on this test, and we haven't killed anybody yet. Not from lack of trying. It's our baby in the chamber, getting ready to go. To think that in about 10 months, it's actually on her way to Mars. Yeah, in just over a year, about 15 months, she'll actually be on Mars. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. When you're in the heat of battle, sometimes you forget and it gets frustrating, but you got to take a step back periodically and go, hey, I'm building something that's going to Mars again.
This is by far our biggest test, and so far, everything is working as expected. We have now hit a point where the smallest little thing that you wouldn't even think of can basically end the mission. And it could be something so small as just dropping a screw. Once you get through this test, we do not have the time anymore to react to any kind of large mistake. Point of no return, I call it.
The launch deadline is firm. Earth and Mars line up close enough to make it happen just once every 26 months. Miss that opportunity, and the next one is another 26 months away. The rover has now finished its time in the chamber. Everything is working. From here, it goes back to the clean room for its final tune-up. In a little over 2 months, the entire spacecraft and JPL team will move to Cape Canaveral, Florida, to prepare for launch in July. The one thing that's not quite ready yet is the centerpiece of the mission: the robotic system to drill and cache Martian rock samples for eventual return to Earth.
It is an amazingly daunting, complex system that we needed to assemble to get this job done. So complicated that it took us longer to get it together than we ever dreamed it would.
Now, only 10 months before launch, this dirty testing version of the hardware is running a full sampling sequence, end-to-end, for the first time.
Awesome. Not bad.
Success. But now it has to do the same thing under Mars conditions. So, as Perseverance finishes up in the big space simulator, the sampling system is moving into a smaller chamber next door. The entire rig, robotic arm, drill turret, sample handling system, and an assortment of rocks to drill, will be lifted into the vertical vacuum chamber. Once sealed inside, the system will have to prove itself, repeatedly, drilling cores and handling samples exactly as it will happen on the frigid, airless surface of Mars. and the first attempt does not go well.
The very first time, we went up the hill to our vacuum chamber that allows us to core in the conditions that we expect to see on Mars. The very first tube we put into the coring bit. We put that bit, we took a core, we broke it off, click. We brought it back into the rover. We took our little sample handling arm, reached up, and went to pull out the tube. And the tube was stuck inside the bit. We're now calling that Excalibur. The sword is stuck in the stone. The tube is stuck in the bit. What's the significance of that? Well, that means that if we can't get that tube out of the bit, this bit is no longer any use to us. We have 6 of these bits all in, so we could stick a tube in a bit 6 times before it would be game over for taking cores. We start to look in detail at some of the mechanisms that could be involved. There's another set of tubes that have gone through our final flight cleaning process. We're starting to exercise those tubes, not in the dirty testing, but in another vacuum chamber. And there we see things that don't look that great. Those mechanisms are showing us stickiness that's very close to locking the mechanism up and making it unusable. And some of them, if they failed, essentially the mission is over.
That stickiness, friction, turns out to be an unintended consequence of the extreme cleaning regimen the tubes and their mechanisms have gone through to prevent them from contaminating samples collected on Mars. Powerful solvents and a high-temperature bakeout drove off every trace of hydrocarbons, including a microscopic layer that remains on conventionally sterilized surfaces.
Interesting thing. Our engineers do tests about friction, understand how to design mechanisms based entirely on data of materials that have that thin layer of the hydrocarbons on them. No mechanisms, no devices, no robots have ever been made or conceived of to be this clean. So all of our understanding about friction, about ways metals mate and don't mate, is all based on metals that have this very thin coating of hydrocarbons. This isn't an issue of workmanship. It is really an issue of creating mechanisms that are unearthly in their cleanliness, and their function is changed by that unearthly cleanliness. Reasonably, we should have expected that, but we didn't really have a finished flight design to put through those tests 4 years ago when we committed to this. And so now, it's only now when we're done that we put it through the tests and we're like, well, there's some problems here.
The question now is, can the hardware be made reliable enough to launch in July 2020, just 8 months away? Or should they buy more time and slip launch to the next opportunity in 2022?
What is good enough, right? None of us really know. My previous experience has been landing. Landing's very binary. Good enough is safely landing the vehicle. Done. If our sampling system successfully gets 30 samples and then fails, well, okay, that's good enough. 20, maybe that's good enough. 10, not good enough.
To miss the launch deadline, putting everything on hold for 26 months, would cost at least $500 million and complicate planning for the sample return mission. But launching on schedule and failing to collect enough samples would be worse.
Because this sampling mission is the first in a 3-mission program spanning over a decade, resulting in samples from Mars being returned to Earth, some of our sampling system mechanisms, if they failed, could not only kill this mission, they kill the follow-on missions. The stakes are kind of unbelievably high.
By mid-February, 6 weeks away, they have to decide whether to move the spacecraft to Florida and prepare for launch, or punt to 2022. Between now and then, the project will focus on getting the evidence they need to make that decision.
We launch in July. We're December. We won't be done with this assessment in January. We won't be done with this assessment in February. But you don't want to pack the thing up and ship it to the Cape if you're not going to then launch it.
It's not unusual for Mars missions to flirt with disaster. In fact, it's almost routine, since each new mission is trying to do something that hasn't been done before.
There is an escalation there due to the arms race between exploration technology and that which demands to be explored. I mean, this is so much more incredibly intense than Curiosity, which slipped because it was so much more incredibly intense than Spirit and Opportunity, which were, I mean, each time, right, our ambitions, we step up to a bigger plate. We take a swing at it and we come very close to not making it. I think that that's good in some regards. I believe that one of the things that we're doing here is performance art, in the art of the possible. We're asked, this lab is a place where we do things that people don't think can be done. But that means you're very close to doing something that can't be done.
To understand what they're up against, they'll need all the sample system hardware for new testing. So the version installed in the rover a few months ago is coming out. The other flight unit, the one that's been struggling in the clean vacuum chamber, is also coming out. Both are headed back to the ultra-clean room while the team comes up with a plan to save the mission. The rover is ready to go. It survived the space simulator and passed its first driving test.
Woo! It's moving. Oh my gosh.
The JPL crew is preparing to take it to Florida for the final push to launch. But with the sampling system in trouble and the launch deadline in jeopardy, no one really knows what's going to happen next.
At this point, usually the guts of the rover are set. Once it's closed up, this is where everything's going to live, and it's not like that anymore. There's always kind of a straggler. There's always a problem, and like, oh, we'll deal with it in Florida, but not on this scale.
It has not been easy. I've never felt as much uncertainty, but we haven't played all the cards yet.
The Perseverance Rover, the spacecraft that takes it to Mars, and the team that put it all together are supposed to move to Florida in just about a month to prepare for launch in July. The primary mission is to drill Martian rock cores, cache them in sterile tubes, and leave them on Mars for a future mission to pick up and return to Earth. The rover and the rest of the spacecraft have been tested, proven, and are ready to go. But problems with the rover's crucial sample handling system have forced a last-minute scramble to meet the launch deadline.
We'd been working on this for a long time, and we followed every protocol. We did everything that had been outlined for us to do. But a lot of people were worried that when we got to Mars, something would get stuck and mission over, and we wouldn't be able to take any samples. So they decided that we needed to take a step back and try to figure out what we're doing.
We are in the middle of a suite of testing, both dirty testing up the hill in a vacuum chamber where we're simulating Mars environments, and dirtiness and coring and looking where dust moves and how it gets into trouble or not. And also very clean hardware, the hardware that we want to take to Mars, testing in a very clean vacuum chamber. Long days, nights and weekends. Some folks are running 24/7. And we've had problems.
2 months ago, the first time they tried to core a rock in the space simulator under Mars conditions, the sample tube got stuck in the bit. They called it Excalibur, Since then, they've learned that's not their biggest problem.
So we have that Excalibur that got stuck, and the analysis suggests we've got a piece of dirt or debris just in an awkward position. We've continued to successfully take cores in dirty testing. We're now up to core 13.
That's the good news. But the investigation into why Excalibur got stuck has uncovered other, more serious problems.
The new things that have happened is in our thermal vacuum chamber with the clean hardware that's going to Mars. At cold temperatures, we saw lots of failures to get tubes just to go into the bits. A piece that worked every time in dirty testing was working almost 0 times in our cold temperature thermal vacuum chamber. We now have a war room for a vast majority of the hours of day. There's people in that war room working those problems.
Flight stuff is good. What's our conclusion?
As each issue comes up, we work to knock it down, to understand it, to figure out if we can live with it. Every morning, I come in ready to kick the butt of every problem we've got on our list. And every evening I leave feeling a little discouraged that maybe we're not going to kick all of the butts. The good news is the next morning I've reset and I'm ready to kick them.
Even if all the butts get kicked and they proceed with plans to launch in July, the sample handling system still won't be ready to install on the rover until after the spacecraft has moved to Florida.
I think it's going to be a little hectic because there's a lot more to do, but we're gonna figure this out. So let's do what we always do. Let's relax, look at the problem, solve it, and move forward.
The job that the flight techs do, a lot of times we're dealing with people that are under a lot of stress, and we need to know how to deal with that person to really get to what they want to do.
Everybody's still doing their thing. They can't stop. At this point, everybody is so driven to take this to its completion and make a really good product that nothing is going to stand in their way.
It's February. 3.5 months have passed, all in since things got a little sideways. Quite literally nights and weekends, full team working through a lot of testing. God, we are beating the bejesus out of this thing. We are really working the system very hard. The big thing that we have struggled with over the last 3 months has been our sampling tubes. The sample tubes go into the bits, inside the beast. Getting them in the bits, we really struggled with. And we really struggled with it because of friction. And because when we make these items unearthly clean, the friction that arises between these metals is much stickier. So, our strategy has been to change the way we clean these tubes. We're only doing the unearthly clean on the piece of the sample tube that matters, where the sample will come in contact.
The tubes get another barrage of solvent baths like they got before. But now there's a final rinse with another solvent called hexane, carefully applied just to the parts of the tube that would come in contact with the sample on Mars. All this makes it possible to do the final bakeout at a lower temperature, making things a bit less clean to reduce the friction, but still clean enough to protect the samples.
We were driving the cleanliness of the mechanism piece to as clean as the sample, the part that the sample has to go into. And now we are letting this be still cleanest thing that ever goes into space, but only the business end of the sample tube gets this final set of solvent rinses, which takes it to that unearthly level of cleanliness. That's helped. Second thing we've done is done a lot of practice of getting these tubes into bits and discovered methods with our little robot arm inside the vehicle to be successful even in the presence of these higher frictions than we've hoped for.
Sweet.
And when we do that, it works. So I think we'll be probably more successful because of our challenges than we would have been if we hadn't had them. We've kind of emerged out the other side with a deeper understanding of the complexities of this thing that we created. Some of which we love and some of which we hate, but all of which we think we can fly. All of which we think will be successful at Mars.
So far, everything that they came up with has worked pretty well, and here we are. We're a little late, but we're still gonna make it.
The flight bits have had their final cleaning. Once installed in the carousel that transfers bits to the drill, they won't see daylight again until the rover is on Mars.
Good to go.
They have to be kept as clean as the tubes, so this is an operation with sterile gloves, masks, gowns, and goggles. Even so, there's no way to eliminate all hydrocarbons in the air. Those signatures of life are slowly but steadily coating the hardware. So the action is choreographed to unfold as quickly but carefully as possible. It may look like a sacred ceremony, but it's just contamination control.
It's a good way to make sure your fingers don't touch anything else besides the hardware. Yeah. Everyone's got different methods. They make this, they do this. Did you not see me wander off?
This is another one of those moments when people say goodbye to their hardware.
Oh my gosh. I was telling them it's like giving away all your puppies. They all found a new home.
In the room next door, they're selecting the final 43 tubes that will go to Mars.
There's a lot of inspection steps. We want to choose the most pristine, the cleanest, the best looking sample tubes. A part of our inspection is borescopic microscopy down into the bore to make sure we've looked at every single speck, fleck, slight reflection, then clean them again. We put our sterile flight tubes in special sheaths, and then that assembly goes into a bake-out for sterilization, and it's inserted in the flight vehicle just prior to buttoning the vehicle up inside the aeroshell and on top of the rocket. This is just the start of the journey. Literally, for these pieces of hardware, which will be the first pieces of hardware in history to go to another planet and come back. Their trip is just about to start. The rover will fly to Florida in a C-17. It'll never come home unless something terrible goes wrong. It's essentially starting its way to Mars. So we're moving forward.
The core JPL team is moving with it, and they'll spend the next 5 months in Florida getting the spacecraft ready for launch.
Very good, Zach. We were moving everything out to the Cape. And the people that were loading on the C-17s were like, how much is this box worth? $2.5 billion. How much is that box worth? $2.5 billion. And how much is that worth? $2.5 billion. The entire project is worth $2.5 billion. If that falls off a forklift, that ends it. So everything from here on out is worth $2.5 billion. We know what we're getting into a bit. We know physically how everything is supposed to happen. It's just when you're at the Cape, you no longer have home field advantage. You can tell people how it's going to be, but they don't know until they get out there.
In fact, no one knows what they're getting into in late February 2020. Soon after they arrive in Florida, so does the COVID-19 pandemic. With the mission and crew at risk, NASA locks down the spacecraft cleanroom to essential personnel. Documentary cameras are now in the hands of techs. Until launch, the JPL team is on its own. A multi-billion-dollar, 8-year production with a cast of thousands is down to just the handful of people who know how to assemble the spacecraft, test it, and get it to the launch pad.
The crew that went down to Florida, that had signed up for being away from home and only seeing them maybe once a month, have found themselves isolated, cut off from friends and family, and with the pressure of the entire project on them, right? No real relief in sight, except for launching this thing.
Just before the pandemic hit in Florida, NASA revealed the winning entry in the contest to name the Mars 2020 rover. Perseverance.
You know, when we got the name Perseverance, we got that on the 5th of March. What appeared at the first week of March like a good name has ended up being prophetic, really. I mean, I cannot think of a more perfect name for this moment in our project, for this moment in NASA, and perhaps in this moment for the world. We're gonna have to persevere.
Toward the end of May, the final pieces of the spacecraft arrive in Florida. Those unearthly clean sample tubes that nearly scuttled the mission a few months before. The sampling system is so complex and so vulnerable to contamination, the team that built it traveled with the hardware from JPL to do the final installation.
At some point, it becomes personal. That's my hardware. My hands have put it all together. I've built it from nothing. If something goes wrong, you feel an emotional attachment to the hardware. All the folks that have been building, all the technicians and other folks, they kind of share that same attitude. They're really involved in it, and they're really taking ownership of what they're doing.
They made hundreds of tubes. Only 43 are going to Mars. What happens to the rest?
They have looked at the internals and they've estimated that it's just shy of a shot. So somebody may fill one of those and take a shot out of it, and not a flight one, but we'll see.
The spacecraft will soon be on its way to the launch pad. The rover has a nuclear power supply that will charge its batteries on Mars. The very last job for the techs is to install it when the rover is on top of the rocket.
We are on top of an Atlas V rocket. Everything is ready to go. And this rocket is swaying. And so we have this nuclear power source that we have on this fixture to shove it in the rover and then bolt it down before we close it out and then put the door on the rocket, and that's it. It's off to the launch pad after that.
It is a very unique experience. You start having nightmares about everything going wrong. You have trouble sleeping because once it's taken out to the launch pad, There's not a lot else you can do.
You've buttoned everything up and it's ready to launch. So now you're like, are we gonna launch? Is everything okay? Is the rocket okay?
Do you realize how many things have to go right for this to actually work?
We've gone through a set of worries, we've gotten those behind us. The vehicle is fueled, it's powered, it's rolled out on the pad. We're ready to go. So hopefully, fingers crossed, tomorrow morning, we leave Earth.
SSE is go. SMA. SMA is go. SMP.
As soon as that spacecraft leaves the planet, this Earth, I think that's really when it's going to set in.
Go Atlas. Go Centaur. Go Mars 2020.
That's all I want to do is watch it take off and do exactly what it's been made for.
Launch director. LD is go and you
Man, mind blowing. This is to me like a dream that I'm part of this team.
Proceeding with the count. ALC, verified T0 is set for 11:50 Zulu.
Now it's on that rocket. The countdown's happening, and you can't do a thing about it.
8, 7, 6, 5.
Crossing your fingers going, don't blow up.
Ignition 2, 1, 0. Release and liftoff as the countdown to Mars continues.
I can't tell you the feeling that you get when you see that rocket light up.
That's something that we did. That's something we created. And it's like nothing else to be part of that.
You hear about that Mars rover, that's something that I built.
Hey, I worked on that. You know, I had a hand in that.
And Atlas TU has gone to closed loop control.
Everybody touches it, and a little bit of their soul goes into it.
Coming up on 30 seconds into flight, the RD-180 is throttling down as expected.
You see it launching, and then the sound is hitting you. And you're realizing that this thing is going.
There it is. There it is.
Wow. Listen to that. It's just incredible that it was here one day, now it's
And now it's gone. Your baby's gone.
Jesus.
You devote your entire life to this, you know, years of it, and all of a sudden it's gone.
Burnout pressure signatures look good. Standing by for SRB jettison shortly.
We're trying to branch out into the universe, and this is one of those steps.
The vehicle is 50 miles in altitude, 85 miles.
It's time for it to do what it's supposed to do.